She demanded the truth about my flight. I gave her something she didn't expect. Captain Leo Mendez adjusted the controls of his ship, the Starblaze, as the bustling intergalactic space station came into view. It was a familiar sight, a haven for travelers, traders, and adventurers from across the galaxy. Leo had spent countless hours docked here, refueling, restocking, and preparing for his next mission. But today felt different. There was an unsettling calm in the air, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. As the Starblaze glided towards the docking bay, Leo's mind drifted back to his last mission. It had been a routine flight at first, just another transport run, nothing out of the ordinary. But as he neared the outskirts of enemy territory, things had gone awry. He had barely escaped a deadly encounter with a hostile alien race guarding an ancient artifact. His mission had changed from simple transport to something far more dangerous. Leo had always been the type to keep his past a mystery. His reputation as a skilled and fearless pilot was built on the countless risks he had taken, the battles he had survived, and the missions that had pushed him to the limit. But the last mission, that one felt different. It was the kind of secret that could change everything, and he wasn't sure he was ready to face the consequences of revealing it. As the Starblaze docked, Leo powered down the ship and prepared to step out. The station's artificial gravity pulled him gently towards the floor as he gathered his belongings. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and he stepped into the station. The sounds of bustling activity filled the air, but there was one person that caught his eye. She was standing near the customs desk, a woman who didn't quite fit in with the usual crowd. Her pale blue skin and silver eyes made her stand out among the humans and alien species that populated the station. She wore a sleek, dark uniform that suggested a position of authority, but it was her presence that commanded attention. There was an air of mystery around her, something about the way she carried herself that made people pause and take notice. As Leo walked past her, their eyes met and she stepped forward, blocking his path. She wasn't tall, but her presence seemed to fill the space between them. She didn't smile, but her gaze was steady, unflinching. "You're Leo Mendez, aren't you?" she asked, her voice calm but assertive. Leo hesitated for a moment, his instincts kicking in. He wasn't used to strangers approaching him directly, especially not on a space station like this. But there was something about her, something that made him feel like she wasn't someone he could easily ignore. "That's me," Leo said, his voice guarded. "Can I help you with something?" The woman didn't respond immediately. Instead, she studied him, as if weighing his every word, his every movement. Leo couldn't help but feel like she was trying to see right through him. "I've been looking into your last flight," she said, her tone more pointed now. "You were on a mission not long ago." "A transport mission, but the records don't match up. What happened on that flight, Captain Mendez?" Leo's heart skipped a beat. His last mission was supposed to be a secret, one that only a few trusted individuals knew about. How could she have known about it? He had erased all traces of it from official records. There was no way anyone should have had access to that information. "I'm not sure what you're talking about," Leo said, trying to keep his composure. "That mission was routine, nothing out of the ordinary." The woman didn't buy it. She stepped closer, her expression unwavering. "You're lying, Captain. I know what you're hiding." Leo's mind raced. Who was she? What did she want with him? He wasn't in the mood for games, and he definitely wasn't ready to discuss his last flight with anyone. But this woman had a way of making him feel like there was no way out. "I'm not hiding anything," Leo said, his voice tinged with frustration. "You must be mistaken." She tilted her head slightly, as if considering his words. For a moment, the silence between them was heavy, almost suffocating. Then, without warning, she spoke again, her words cutting through the tension like a knife. "I know what you found on that flight," she said quietly. "And I know who you encountered. You're not fooling anyone." Leo's heart raced. She knew about the artifact. She knew about the enemy ships. How was that possible? He had been careful, so careful to keep everything under wraps. But somehow this stranger had found him, and now she was demanding answers. The woman stepped back, her eyes never leaving his. "I'm not here to hurt you, Captain, but I need the truth. Now." Leo stood there for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. He had always been able to keep his secrets, but now it seemed like those secrets were about to catch up with him. He had never been one to back down from a challenge, but this was different. This wasn't just another mission. This was something far bigger. He took a deep breath and considered his options. He could lie, continue playing it safe, or he could tell her the truth. But what would that truth cost him? What would it cost the galaxy? For a long moment, he stared at the woman, weighing his decision. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady but with a hint of defiance. "You want the truth?" he asked, his words laced with determination. "I'll give you the truth, but be careful what you ask for." Her eyes gleamed with a mix of curiosity and anticipation. "I'm ready," she said, her voice low but certain. Leo nodded, and with one final glance at the woman, he began to speak. It was time to tell her everything. Leo took a deep breath as he stood in the quiet of the docking bay. The woman, Naira, had asked him a question he never expected. She knew too much about his last flight, more than anyone should. It wasn't possible. No one was supposed to know about the mission he'd just completed. Yet here she was, standing in front of him with eyes full of curiosity, waiting for him to speak the truth. "I don't know who you are or how you found out about my flight," Leo began, his voice calm but firm. "But I'm not going to play games with you. You want the truth." "Fine, but you need to understand something first." Naira's expression didn't change. She just nodded slightly, urging him to continue. Leo took another breath, his mind racing. It felt like a weight was being lifted off his chest as he started to speak. "I wasn't just flying a transport mission. That was a cover. The truth is, I was sent into enemy territory on an unsanctioned mission. I went to places that are considered off-limits by most of the galaxy's governments." Naira's eyes flickered with interest, but she didn't interrupt. She just kept her gaze steady, waiting for him to go on. "I didn't go there by choice," Leo continued. "I was ordered to. The mission came from people higher up, people who didn't care about the risks. I wasn't supposed to come back. I was supposed to disappear and leave no trace." He could see Naira's mind working, her expression thoughtful. She wasn't just listening, she was processing every word. He could tell that this was something important to her, even if she wasn't showing it. "I was supposed to pick up something," Leo went on. "An artifact, a thing that's been lost for centuries, something ancient. It's not just any artifact, though, it's dangerous. If it falls into the wrong hands, it could change everything." Naira's eyebrows raised slightly, but she didn't speak. Leo had her full attention now. "I didn't know what I was getting into when I took that mission," he admitted. "All I knew was that the higher-ups were willing to risk everything for it. The artifact's power, well, it's not something you want to mess with. That's why I almost didn't make it back. The aliens guarding it, they don't let anyone take it. They'll do whatever it takes to protect it." Leo paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. His hands were beginning to shake, but he steadied them against the side of the ship, willing himself to stay calm. "I barely escaped with my life," he said. "I didn't come back empty-handed. I brought the artifact with me, but I couldn't just hand it over to them. I couldn't trust them." He glanced at Naira, watching her reaction carefully. Her face remained neutral, but he could see the gears turning behind her eyes. She wasn't just listening, she was trying to understand his motives, and for some reason that made Leo feel more exposed than he had ever felt before. "Why did you come to me?" he asked, finally breaking the silence. "What do you want with me? I'm just a pilot." "You want the artifact, don't you?" Naira's gaze softened for a moment, but she didn't answer right away. She took a step closer to him, and Leo instinctively stepped back, just enough to put some distance between them. He didn't know why, but he felt like this woman could read him like an open book. "You're not just a pilot, Leo," she said softly. "You're a man who's seen things, who's been to places others would never dare to go. You've been entrusted with something far beyond your understanding, and now you have a choice to make." Leo frowned, not sure where she was going with this. "What do you mean?" Naira continued, her voice steady and calm. "You're not the only one interested in that artifact. The galaxy is full of people who would kill for it, who would use it for their own gain. I'm not asking you to trust me, but I'm telling you this. I've been sent to find it. I've been sent to stop the wrong people from getting their hands on it." Leo's mind raced. She was telling him that she was after the artifact, too, but was she telling the truth? Could he trust her? "I'm not here to harm you," Naira continued, sensing his hesitation. "I'm here to help you. If we can work together, we can stop those who want to use the artifact for destruction." Leo's eyes narrowed. "And why should I believe you? You could just be another pawn in the game." "I'm not a pawn," she said, her voice growing more forceful. "I've seen the damage that kind of power can cause. I've been fighting against it my entire life. I'm trying to protect the galaxy from the chaos that artifact can bring." For the first time, Leo saw the genuine concern in her eyes. It wasn't just about the artifact for her. It was about something bigger, the future of the galaxy. The lives of countless beings who would be caught in the crossfire if the wrong hands got hold of the power within that ancient relic. Leo felt the weight of her words settle deep within him. He wasn't alone in this anymore. There was someone else, someone who understood the stakes, but that didn't mean he trusted her, not yet. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice still cautious. Naira took another step closer, her gaze never leaving his. "I want you to help me stop them. You're the only one who knows where it is. You're the only one who can help me get it before they do." Leo considered her words carefully. He didn't know what her true motives were, but he couldn't deny the fact that they were both on the same side, at least for now. "I'm not sure I trust you," Leo said finally. "But I don't have much of a choice, do I?" Naira's lips curved into a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Trust is earned, Leo, and you're right, you don't have much of a choice, but I promise you if you help me, I'll make sure you don't regret it." Leo didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned away from her, looking out at the stars. He knew he was in deeper than ever before. And he knew that the road ahead would be far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. But one thing was clear, he wasn't going to be able to face it alone. And maybe, just maybe, Naira was the key to getting out of this alive. Leo sat back against the wall of his ship, staring out at the stars. The conversation with Naira had left him unsettled. There was something about her that he couldn't quite figure out. She had come to him with the truth about his mission, but did that mean he could trust her? Could he really put his faith in a stranger who had known more about his past than he cared to admit? He ran a hand through his dark hair, trying to calm his thoughts. The danger of the artifact had always been real, but now that he had Naira in the mix, the stakes were even higher. He needed to focus. He couldn't let himself get distracted by uncertainty. If he was going to survive this, he had to stay sharp, and right now, that meant figuring out what Naira's role was in all of this. The mission hadn't just been about retrieving an artifact. It had been about something bigger, something that Leo hadn't fully understood until now. The galaxy was filled with factions, governments, and organizations all fighting for control over power. But this artifact, this ancient object, had the potential to change everything. If it fell into the wrong hands, it could destroy everything Leo and others had fought to protect. Leo knew that. But now Naira was in the picture, and he wasn't sure if she was part of the solution or part of the problem. As the starblaze drifted through the galaxy, Leo found his thoughts wandering back to the day he'd first encountered the artifact. He had been given the mission under orders from his superiors, but none of them had explained why it was so important. The artifact had been hidden away for centuries, and it had only been rediscovered recently, deep in the heart of enemy territory. The records he had studied were vague, but there was one thing that stood out. The artifact was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It held unimaginable power. Leo's ship had barely made it out alive. The enemy forces were relentless, and they had nearly destroyed him before he could escape with the artifact in hand. That was when he realized the truth. He couldn't trust anyone with this power. Not the government, not the enemy, and certainly not the aliens who had been guarding it. He had kept the artifact hidden, believing it was safer that way. He hadn't planned on getting involved with anyone, especially not Naira. But now that she was here asking for his help, things were changing. The truth was, Leo didn't know what to do. He couldn't keep running from the responsibility forever. As he sat there in the quiet of his ship, a soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Leo stood up quickly, his instincts kicking in. It could be anyone, one of his crew members, another stranger, but something told him it was Naira. He opened the door to find her standing there, her expression unreadable. For a moment, neither of them spoke. There was a heavy silence, as though both of them were weighing the next words that would come out. "I thought you might be interested in what I've discovered," Naira said, her voice calm but with an edge of urgency. "I've been doing some research, Leo. The artifact isn't just a weapon, it's a key to something much bigger than you and me." Leo raised an eyebrow, unsure of what she was getting at. "What do you mean by a key?" Naira stepped inside the ship, closing the door behind her. She looked around for a moment, as if she were considering her next move. "I've been tracing the artifact's history," she explained. "It's part of a long-lost civilization, one that vanished centuries ago. But before they disappeared, they created something, a technology that could change the way the galaxy operates. This artifact, it's the key to unlocking it." Leo listened carefully, his mind racing. The idea that the artifact was more than just a powerful object made sense. It had never seemed like just a weapon. There was always something deeper about it, something that made Leo hesitate before he decided to turn it over to anyone. "So, what does this technology do?" Leo asked, his voice steady despite the storm of thoughts in his head. Naira didn't immediately answer. Instead, she walked over to a nearby table and activated a holographic display. Images of ancient ruins and symbols flickered across the screen. This civilization, they had the ability to control energy on a level that no one in the galaxy can even begin to understand. The artifact is part of a much larger system, something that could reshape the entire galaxy. Leo's heart skipped a beat. He had heard rumors of such technology, of civilizations that had come before them, but he had always dismissed them as legends. To think that it was real, that it was within reach, this was more than he could have ever imagined. "I thought it was just a weapon," Leo said, his voice barely a whisper. "I thought it was a way to destroy our enemies." "That's what they want you to think," Naira said, turning to face him. "The ones who are after this artifact, they want to use it for destruction. But they don't realize what they're dealing with. The technology can be used for more than just war. It can be used to heal, to create, to change the balance of power." Leo processed her words slowly. He had been trained to fight, to protect, and to destroy. He had never considered that such power could be used for something good. It made him question everything he had believed. "So, you're saying we should use it?" Leo asked, still skeptical. "I'm saying we should protect it," Naira replied firmly. "There are others who will stop at nothing to take it from you, Leo. I'm here to help you stop them. If we don't act quickly, the wrong people will get their hands on it, and that's a future none of us can survive." Leo's mind raced as he took in her words. He had known that the galaxy was filled with people who wanted to control power, but he had never fully understood the extent of it. He had always been a soldier, a pilot, someone who followed orders. But this was different. This wasn't just a mission, it was a fight for the future of everything he had ever known. "I'm not sure I can trust anyone with this," Leo admitted, his voice tinged with doubt. "I've been keeping it hidden for so long, it's the only way I know how to protect it." Naira stepped closer to him, her eyes softening. "I understand your hesitation, but I'm not asking you to trust anyone, Leo. I'm asking you to trust yourself. You've made it this far, and you're the only one who can protect this. You're the only one who can keep it safe." Leo stared at her for a moment, his thoughts swirling. She wasn't asking for his trust, but she was asking for his help. And deep down, Leo knew that she was right. The artifact had to be protected. The galaxy needed someone to stand up and make the right choice. "I'll help you," Leo said finally, his voice firm. "But we do this my way, no more secrets." Naira nodded, her expression hardening with resolve. "Agreed, but there's something else you need to know." Leo raised an eyebrow, unsure of what she meant. "We're not the only ones after the artifact," Naira continued, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "There are forces far more dangerous than we've encountered so far, forces that will stop at nothing to get it." Leo's heart sank as he realized that the battle was only just beginning. He had thought that surviving the mission would be the hardest part, but now he understood that the real fight was about to start. And it was going to take everything he had to protect the artifact and the future of the galaxy. Leo stood at the cockpit of the Starblaze, staring out at the vastness of space. The stars were distant, cold, and unfeeling, just like the situation he found himself in. He was no longer just a pilot. He was a man on the edge of something much bigger, something that could change the galaxy forever. Naira had told him the truth, or at least part of it. She wasn't like the other people Leo had crossed paths with throughout his career. She wasn't just after power or control. She seemed to genuinely believe in the importance of protecting the artifact, and now he had to decide if he could trust her. "Any updates?" Leo asked, turning toward Naira, who was sitting at the table in the corner of the cockpit. She was examining a holographic map of their route, her fingers moving quickly across the interface. "We've got a few hours before we reach the safe zone," Naira replied without looking up. "But we need to be ready. The people after the artifact aren't just some rogue group. They're organized. They've been hunting us ever since we left the space station." Leo clenched his jaw. He had known this wasn't going to be easy, but hearing it out loud made it real. They were being hunted, and it wasn't just about the artifact anymore. It was about survival. "What are we up against?" Leo asked, trying to keep his voice steady. He had been in more than a few dangerous situations, but this was different. This wasn't about enemies he could fight in a dogfight or outmaneuver in space. This was a war for control of something far greater than either of them. Whoever they are, they have resources, Naira said, finally meeting his gaze. I'm not sure who's pulling the strings, but I know they won't stop until they get what they want. We're not just running from them, Leo. We're running towards something. What do you mean by that? Leo asked, confused. The artifact isn't just the key to power, Naira explained, her voice low. It's part of a larger system, one that has been dormant for centuries. It's not just a weapon or a tool for energy. It's something more, a way to control the flow of energy throughout the galaxy. Whoever controls it can control everything. Leo absorbed her words in silence. He had always known the artifact was powerful, but hearing her explain it like that made the stakes even higher. If the wrong people got their hands on it, everything could change in ways no one was prepared for. He thought back to the moment he had first laid eyes on the artifact, the ancient object that had nearly cost him his life. He had thought it was just a mission, just a simple retrieval job. But now, it felt like he had stumbled into the middle of a galactic conspiracy. We need to move fast, Naira said, snapping him out of his thoughts. There's a planet ahead. We'll make a stop to lay low for a while, but we can't stay too long. We'll be easy targets if we do. Leo nodded and adjusted the ship's course. As they approached the planet, the uneasy feeling in his gut grew stronger. The last thing he wanted was to put Naira in danger, but he knew they didn't have many options. They needed to regroup and come up with a plan. The planet below looked quiet, its surface covered with forests and mountains. It seemed like a peaceful place, a good spot to hide for a while. But Leo couldn't shake the feeling that peace was the last thing they would find here. We should land near the edge of the forest, Naira suggested. It will be harder for anyone to track us there. Leo agreed and guided the Starblaze down toward the surface. The atmosphere was dense, and the ship's engines rumbled as they cut through it, making a smooth descent. He looked over at Naira, who was still focused on the holographic display. Her eyes were intense, her mind already calculating their next move. When they landed, the silence of the forest was almost overwhelming. The only sounds were the low hum of the ship systems and the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. Leo stepped out first, his boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. Naira followed, her steps light but purposeful. "This is it," Leo said, taking in the landscape. The trees towered above them, their branches forming a dense canopy that blocked out most of the light. It felt like they were on the edge of nowhere, a perfect place to hide. Naira looked around, her eyes scanning the surroundings with a practiced ease. This should be enough. But we need to stay alert. We won't be the only ones looking for shelter here. Leo nodded. The feeling of being hunted was always in the back of his mind, but now it felt more real than ever. He couldn't afford to relax, not even for a second. They made their way into the dense forest, setting up a small camp near the base of a large rock formation. Leo wasn't sure how long they would stay, but he knew they had to make the most of it. They had to be ready for whatever came next. As the hours passed, the forest around them began to grow darker. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, and the air grew cooler. Leo kept his gaze fixed on the horizon, watching for any signs of movement. He knew they couldn't stay here forever. The longer they remained, the more likely it was that someone would find them. Naira sat down beside him, her gaze distant. She seemed to be lost in thought, perhaps contemplating the same things he was. "Leo," she said quietly, breaking the silence. "There's something you need to know about the people after the artifact." Leo turned to her, waiting for her to continue. "They're not just after power," she said, her voice tinged with a quiet urgency. "They're after something else, something even more dangerous." Leo frowned. "What do you mean?" Naira met his gaze, her eyes dark with knowledge. "The artifact isn't just a key to power. It's part of a much larger plan, a plan to reshape the entire galaxy. Whoever controls it can remake the universe itself, and that's what they're after. They're not just looking for power, they want to control everything." Leo's heart sank. He had known the artifact was important, but he hadn't realized just how far-reaching its influence could be. If Naira was right, then they were dealing with something much bigger than either of them had expected. The artifact wasn't just a piece of ancient technology. It was a weapon that could change the very fabric of reality itself. "We can't let them have it," Leo said, his voice determined. "We can't let them win." Naira nodded, her expression hardening. "That's why we need to move fast. We need to find the artifact's true location before they do. If they get their hands on it, the galaxy will never be the same." Leo stood up, his mind made up. Then let's go. We're not going to let anyone control the future of the galaxy, not while we're still breathing. Together, they prepared to leave their camp behind and continue their journey, knowing that the road ahead would be filled with danger. But Leo wasn't going to back down. He couldn't. Not with everything at stake. Leo could feel the tension in the air as he and Naira moved deeper into the dense forest. The soft rustle of leaves under their boots was the only sound, but to Leo, it felt like the world was holding its breath. They were on the move again, and every step they took seemed to lead them closer to something they couldn't fully understand. The artifact had always been a mystery, but now it felt like a ticking time bomb, one that could explode at any moment. They had been traveling for hours, moving through the forest without a clear destination, but Leo knew they couldn't keep running forever. Eventually, they would have to confront the people who were after them. They didn't know who those people were yet, but the urgency in Naira's voice told Leo everything he needed to know. This wasn't just another mission. This was the beginning of something much bigger. "Do you think they're following us?" Leo asked, breaking the silence. Naira didn't look at him immediately. She was scanning the forest, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. Finally, she spoke. "Yes, they know we're here. They always know." Leo clenched his jaw. He wasn't surprised. They had been running from their enemies for too long, and it was clear now that they wouldn't be able to hide forever. But where could they go? They couldn't outrun everyone, and they certainly couldn't fight an entire fleet by themselves. "We need to find the artifact," Naira continued, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "It's the only way to stop them." Leo nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He had no doubt that the artifact was powerful, but it felt like they were gambling with forces beyond their control. It was a terrifying thought. What if they weren't strong enough to handle it? What if the artifact was more dangerous than they realized? He turned to Naira. "What if we can't stop them? What if the artifact does more harm than good?" Naira looked at him then, her expression unreadable. "We don't have a choice, Leo. The galaxy's future depends on us. We're the only ones who can stop them from using it. We can't afford to fail." The weight of her words sank in. He had never been a man to back down from a challenge, but this felt different. This was a battle for the future, and no matter what they did, the odds were against them. As they moved through the thick underbrush, Leo began to notice something strange. The forest around them was too quiet. The usual sounds of birds and animals were absent, replaced by a heavy stillness. It was as though the entire planet was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. "Something's not right," Leo muttered. Naira stopped in her tracks, her eyes narrowing. "Stay alert," she said, her voice low. "We're close. They might be closer than we think." Leo didn't need any further warning. He moved silently beside her, every muscle in his body tense, his instincts on high alert. They were getting closer to the artifact, but at what cost? The forest soon began to clear, revealing a large clearing ahead. In the center stood an ancient structure, half buried in the earth and covered in vines. The architecture was unlike anything Leo had ever seen, sharp angles, symbols carved into the stone that seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. This was it. The artifact was here. "Is this where it's hidden?" Leo asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Naira nodded, her face set with determination. "Yes, but be careful. The artifact isn't just sitting there waiting for us to take it. It's protected by ancient technology, and we're not the only ones who know about it." Leo felt a cold shiver run down his spine. They weren't alone, and they weren't the only ones searching for the artifact. Whoever had come before them had left traps behind, traps that would be triggered the moment they set foot inside. He looked at Naira, ready to ask how they were going to proceed, but before he could speak, the ground beneath them shook. A low rumble echoed through the clearing, and the ancient structure seemed to shift. The vines that had covered it for centuries fell away, revealing hidden doors and pathways beneath the surface. "They're here," Naira said, her eyes flashing with urgency. "We need to move now." Leo didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward the structure, his heart pounding in his chest. Naira was right behind him, her movements swift and practiced. They had no time to waste. If they didn't act quickly, the artifact would fall into the wrong hands, and the galaxy would pay the price. As they reached the entrance, a sudden blast of energy struck the ground in front of them, sending dirt and rocks flying. Leo dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast. His pulse raced as he scrambled to his feet. "They're shooting at us!" Leo shouted, his eyes scanning the clearing for any sign of the attackers. Naira's expression was grim. "They've been following us for too long." They know we're here and they won't stop until they get what they want. Leo's hand instinctively went to his sidearm, but he knew they couldn't fight their way through this. They needed to get to the artifact, and they needed to do it quickly. Without warning, Naira bolted toward the entrance of the structure. Leo followed closely behind, his breath heavy as they raced through the narrow passage. The walls were covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Leo had no idea what they meant, but he could feel the power radiating from them. They reached a large chamber at the center of the structure. In the middle stood the artifact, surrounded by a protective energy field. It pulsed with energy, casting a faint glow that illuminated the entire room. "That's it," Naira said, her voice filled with awe. "The artifact, the key to everything." Leo approached cautiously, but before he could reach the artifact, a figure appeared at the entrance of the chamber. It was a tall, cloaked figure, their face hidden in shadow. "You think you can stop us?" the figure said, their voice deep and cold. "You think you can control the power of the artifact?" Leo's grip tightened around his weapon, but Naira held up her hand. "No," she said, her voice calm. "We're not here to control it, we're here to protect it, and if you want it, you'll have to go through us." The figure laughed, a cold, hollow sound that echoed through the chamber. "You're too late. The artifact is already ours." Leo's heart sank as the figure stepped forward, revealing more of their face. It was someone he had never seen before, but their eyes, those eyes, looked familiar. Something about them sent a chill through Leo's bones. "You," Leo exclaimed, his voice shaking. "You're one of them." The figure smirked. "I was hoping you'd recognize me." As the figure raised their hand, the energy field around the artifact flared to life, its power surging and crackling. Leo's mind raced. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. "Naira," Leo whispered, his voice tight. "We need to stop them, now." Naira nodded, her expression hardening. "This ends here." And with that, the battle for the artifact and the fate of the galaxy began.